Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Souls Outside. So, we're going to start by chatting a bit about possibilities and a question to be asking yourselves to keep possibilities open and for effective brainstorming. Then, we're going to bring on Reverend Barbara Kawa, who is a spiritual advisor and wedding officiant, to share with us about her spiritual awakening. Before we get into our third section, and she shares some ways that couples have been reimagining their weddings during COVID and how she's a piece of that puzzle for many couples. All right, stick with us, check it out. Welcome to Souls Outside, where we're all about finding the trail to stay true to your path. We do this by inviting featured guests on every show to share with you how you can follow in their soul prints, so you can choose which trail maps you need to continue on your journey. My name is Shannon Pohl, and I'm loving having navigated my own pivot from engineering to now being a master results coach and hypnotherapist, plus a forest guide who loves getting outside so we can learn from the nature, foster stewardship, and really amplify our successes by being outside in nature. I'm so excited to have you join today's episode. Welcome to Souls Outside. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Souls Outside. I'm so excited to bring on Reverend Barbara Kawa later to share about her spiritual journey, as well as chatting with us a little bit about how weddings have evolved with COVID. As a reverend and a wedding officiant, she's definitely been in a place to facilitate for other people and facilitate this experience. And she'll share with us a little bit about some of why people are still deciding to get married, some of the options around that, and opening up those possibilities, which is what I wanted to open up our episode chatting a little bit about, is possibilities. Because there's always so many options, and I think one of the things that can happen is that we might be asking ourselves the wrong question. So I think it was maybe our 6th episode. We talked about a question that for students, new grads, job seekers, you never want to ask them because it kind of shuts down the energy, shuts down the flow for them in that path. And that happens even when we're thinking, well, for them in their own worlds, and when we're thinking about how can we do things, which is the question that we want to be asking ourselves. So the examples we'll hear today are about couples wanting to get married, and for whether it was a wedding that got derailed for you or something else, because we all had something that went differently than originally expected. And it's, I mean, in any moment, even when things are flowing like the way we want them to, we can ask ourselves, how can we? And especially when especially when shit hits the fan, that's when we really need to ask ourselves, okay, despite everything that's going on, how can I move forward? Which in other videos and other things, we've talked a lot about our point B, why are we moving forward towards something? We've also talked about the why from the push behind us, the pain that we're going away from, having this towards away from. And because those are going to give us our 2 points we're moving between, so that even if in the middle we decide to scooch off in a different direction, we're able to bring ourselves back into alignment. And this how can I question really comes into play when we have those boulders, those rocks, those obstacles that gets in our path. And it's just about asking, how can I? If I suspend disbelief for just a moment and just imagine I have all of the resources, all the time, all the money, all the energy I could possibly imagine having, how could I move forward? How could I do this? And then yes, if if you're in a position where you have limited time or energy or money, or even if you have all the time, money, and energy in the world and you just don't want to put all of it to one thing, the second round of how can I is okay, so with all the resources in the world, we've identified some ideas on how we could move forward. Then we take a look at those and go, okay, based on the resources that I do have, one, which of these options do I have the resources for within me, myself, and I? Which ones do I have the resources for? So it's step two, I guess. And then the next part of that is, okay, based on these options in front of me, all these how can I's that I've brainstormed for moving forward, which ones do I have some of it? Do I have a piece of what's needed? And who do I know that can help me fill in those little other pieces? So for instance, today we're talking about weddings. So I got married 2 years ago, so I have a decent imagination of what's going on for couples that have had weddings canceled, because I'm so grateful that mine went forward smoothly. And at the same time, there's so much more creativity happening with some things these days. So anyways, as a couple getting married, all of a sudden, wedding as you originally envisioned it, no longer happening. And then once that's when the decision, and how can we move forward from this? Do we postpone? Do we do a small ceremony now and a big party later? Do we just do the whole thing right now and re-envision how that goes? All of these questions. And in some instances, it might be that you've been planning to do a destination wedding. So maybe the officiant that you plan to have in the Bahamas, well, you're no longer going to the Bahamas. So we need to find another officiant. FYI, Reverend Barbara Cow is available. Doing that way. Or maybe, you're able to still have the minister that you've grown up with, or the priest or the rabbi or the other religious leader who, sorry, I really should, well, honestly, total side note, I wish I'd had studied more world religions by this point. It's definitely a curiosity. So if you'd like to come on our show and chat about another religion, another faith, love to have you so we can all learn together. So maybe you have the officiant role tied down and you need to reach out about flowers, or about how to do the live streaming, which is definitely possible, and how to do that and how to make that experience wonderful and amazing, both for yourself and your guests. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. As we're faced with these challenges, I mean, as much as COVID, a lot of things have settled out and they've become normalized, there's still those waves that are happening where we're all on one page, and then something changes and we have to go, okay, now how do I float my boat? How do I balance this thing out? And then another huge wave comes and we have to rebalance again. So as we're building these skills of rebalancing, as things happen, asking ourselves, how can I keep moving forward to the next point? How can I keep doing this? And then if do I have the resources I need to do this? Or do I need to ask other people? But just keeping that in mind. How could this possibly happen? So I'll leave you with those thoughts for now. And in just a moment, we'll bring on Reverend Barbara Cow to introduce herself. Stay tuned. All right, welcome, lovely people. Today we have with us the Reverend Barbara Kawa, who is a spiritual advisor and wedding officiant, as well as a friend and colleague of mine. So Barbara, I'm super excited to welcome you on this show. Happy to have you, and I'm so excited for when we talk about weddings later. But before we get into that, we always like to ask our guests about a major pivot that happened in their life that led them to where they are today. So we pose that question to you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for having me here, Shannon. When you asked if I could come on the show, that was no hesitation whatsoever, because I know what kind of a person you are. You're a great friend and colleague, and I would jump at the chance to be able to support you. So thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining.
And as for the pivot, thank you for asking that. Lots of people think that it has to be something super major, big epiphany. It doesn't always have to be that way. And so I grew up in a big family. There's 10 of us, 8 brothers and sisters all together. So 4 and 4. And I'm number 7. Hello, number 7. And lucky number 7 is what I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up that way, my mom was very spiritual, even though we were brought up as Roman Catholics. My mom was more on the spiritual side of things. She liked to talk about herbs. She read a lot of books. She taught us what heaven was like, all that kind of stuff. And so growing up to us, that was normal. Most people, they at that time wouldn't have thought so. And so, as years go on and you feel more things as an empath as well, I was feeling other people's feelings, didn't know what to do. One of the best things that I did was to be outside in the forest at the cottage.
Mm,
So
nice.
that was my saving grace and still is. So that's where that fits in there. However, um, the pivot point, we'll get to that part of our question, was that I have the gift of being able to measure people's timelines. I don't do it automatically. It's only if they ask or if it's necessary for them to know. And so I want to make that clear so it's not like I can look at you and go, "Oh, I know how long you have left." No,
Right.
that's not what I do.
Yeah. Specific switch has to be flipped in order to, yeah.
Exactly. So thank God for that because I don't want to know about everybody's timeline.
Mm,
I don't.
too much.
However, in this instance, it was important. And so I knew my mom only had 2 years left, and she
Mm,
was 76 when she passed. And so I knew that there was only 2 years left. I was living in Brampton. We grew up in Toronto, and that's where my mom was living. And so I still had all of my services like dentist, doctor, ophthalmologist, all of those folks still in Toronto. And I decided not to switch them so I could then come to my appointment and immediately go to my mom's house and spend the day with her.
nice.
I knew it was important because I didn't want to be one of those people who said, "Oh, I wish I had spent more time." We've heard about them all the time. So I was like, "Thank you, God, for letting me know." I know it sounds horrible, like, you know that your mom was going to die in 2 years. However, I also knew that it wasn't up to me as to when she was going to pass, how it was going to happen. I was grateful I knew because then I had the time to actually spend. So I
Mm,
learned so much just being by her side. Now, in that time, I was going through the great questioning, as I call it, where I was wondering, what happens after we die? Do we have a soul? Is there a heaven? And many people have gone through that kind of questioning and wondering and things like that. And here's a little tidbit. I used to work at a cemetery at that
really?
same time. Yeah. Now imagine
I didn't
imagine
know
what
that.
was happening all at the same time.
Yeah.
Here I'm knowing my mom is passing, I'm going through the great questioning, and I'm working at the cemetery.
Universe knew what to put in front of you.
Oh, did they ever? Holy cow. So I was actually at that time afraid of old people
No, that
because
makes sense.
it does. And I was going, oh my God, I don't want to get old. I don't want to get old. And anyways, so in that whole time of great questioning, I was still, questioning. So it wasn't about rejecting everything, it was about what's true for me now.
Mm,
So that's what's a little bit different. It wasn't, I'm going to reject the church completely, or no, it wasn't about complete rejection. It was, what do I keep? What do I then leave behind and let go of?
mm. So more of a filtering. We're like when we're
Yeah,
cleaning out our clousets, that's what I'm thinking of. And you're like, this still fits me. Okay, I'll keep it. This, how is this still in my closet? Donate, move along.
exactly. That's the perfect metaphor. And so during that time, I was sponging as much as I could from my mom, spending the time with her. I think she also knew herself because she'd postpone her afternoon nap, which she would never, ever do.
Mm,
She would postpone her nap to spend the time with me.
mm,
So even though it was 2 hours past her nap time,
right.
she spent the time. So to me, that was very precious.
Mm-hmm.
And then after she did pass, which was a miracle in itself, and I don't mean it to sound like, thank God she died.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of the way that it happened was so like her
Hmm.
and it was like she had a hand in every aspect of it.
Beautiful.
And so we felt like the whole family didn't feel well, not the whole, most of us felt like we knew it was coming and it was okay that she passed peacefully.
Hmm.
And so that's what really made the difference.
Right.
And our mom loved our family so much. She did everything for us. Like she cooked, she cut hair, she sewed, she, like, you name it, she did it. And did it out of love. It wasn't out of obligation.
Hmm.
She loved to take care of her family. So the big part of the great questioning, this is the pivot point, was that we all stood in the basement one time, all of us going, oh, well, now who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Who's going to do the other thing? And then
Mm.
it was like the aha moment. It was like so huge. It was like, oh my God, there's no way she would leave us forever. We'll have her with us to find, like, she was good at finding things.
Mm.
You ask her where something was, and she would tell you, I'd go, where are my green socks? She'd go, it's in the cupboard on the bottom shelf on the left-hand corner in the back. And you're like, what the heck? How did she know exactly where that was?
Yeah.
We don't know
Right.
specifically. Um, I put it down to intuition. My dad to this day still asks her, and this has been 10 years that she's been passed. He still asks her where things are.
That's
Ah,
amazing.
it is. And so for me, at that pivot point, when I realized my mom couldn't be gone forever, everything then fell into place. I was like, oh, okay. Well, then heaven has to exist because where else would she go knowing my mom?
Right.
And so then it came to that point where it was like, okay, now what?
Hmm.
And then that's when the spirituality opened up for me. I started to realize that my mission was to assist people who, like me, were gifted growing up, but didn't have the opportunity to learn about their gifts and know how to use them.
Mm.
And so that's like the big mission. And how does Officiant fall into there?
That was what I was going to ask because I know that's a piece of it and what we're going to talk about in just a moment. We're going to get into more about weddings, but
Yeah, and so then that was the big pivot point, and thank God we did have Google at the time,
mm,
and I was able to start looking things up. And um, anybody who realizes that there's more to it than we think,
mhm,
know that sometimes when we Google things, other things come up instead,
mm.
which is exactly what happened to me. I Googled alternative therapies, and my first mentor popped up, and he had nothing to do with alternative therapies. He was teaching about angels.
Mm.
I guess you could say it is an alternative therapy, but I don't think to Google it was.
No, and that's where we always hear that the teacher who, when you need a teacher, they'll appear. Oh, I'm botching that phrase.
When the student is ready, the teacher will come.
That one. Right. So no matter what you were Googling, you were ready for another teacher, and therefore, I guess he came into your world.
Yep, he did. He did.
Very cool. Well, I'm loving hearing, especially when I have friends and colleagues on. I love hearing everyone's stories, and it's always cool to hear things that I haven't learned before from people that I've known for a few years. So thank you for coming on and sharing um, your journey and through going through that great questioning. And then it was really when that aha moment landed that really opened things up and got you going on your path, which, as we know, partially is a wedding officiant. And so, in just a few moments, we'll have you share your thoughts on how we've been rethinking weddings during this COVID time and navigating this new landscaping. Not landscaping, although maybe you're landscaping your lawn in term for your wedding since it's outside. Who knows?
Yep.
Cool. So thank you for this, and everyone stay tuned as we move into wedding mode. All right, welcome back, everybody. So, we still have with us today Reverend Barbara Kawa, who is a spiritual advisor and wedding officiant. And so, we've already learned about her journey, her spiritual journey and spiritual awakening to really delve in and explore different aspects of spirituality. And I'll just invite you, Barb, to share with us a little bit of how you went from, I mean, you've been a spiritual advisor for many, many years. And in the last year, have added being a wedding officiant on into your skill set. So maybe you can just share with us why that was an important part before we get into talking about rethinking weddings.
Thank you. So, how it all ties in, I know they sound like two separate topics. However, for me, growing up in the Catholic Church, I was extremely involved. I was doing readings, I was singing in the choir, I was helping with coordinating all of the major celebrations like Christmas and Easter and all of those kinds of things. And I remember thinking at one point that I would love to do weddings.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, females are not allowed to be Catholic priests.
Mm.
So I'd given up on that dream, and that was when I was 18 years old. So I had given up on that dream thinking, okay, well, that's not going to happen because, I was firmly in the Catholic Church. I didn't think that anything would ever change. And then after my spiritual awakening, about 2 years ago, I started to think, oh, well, maybe I can revisit that dream and see if I can incorporate it. And at that time, I couldn't figure it out. And so again, I put it aside. I put it aside. I didn't say no. I just went, okay,
Mm.
maybe not now. And then, like you said, about a year ago, I got the really big nudge. Okay, it's time to do this. And so then, Google being my friend, I looked up becoming a minister and I found someone in Richmond Hill. She was able to then help me and guide me to being a metaphysical minister, which means I accept all paths.
Mm.
And so then I realized that my dream now can come true.
Nice.
And it ties in as a spiritual advisor because all of my clients now are my congregation.
Mm.
So then it was like, oh, look, cool, I can now do both. So they tie together in that way. So now I realize that I'm able to perform weddings. My
Nice.
dream had come true. I'm able to get couples married and watch as their lives unfold in front of them, to be present at the moment when they are in the most love possible. Not that that love won't grow as they go into their married life.
Mm.
However, this is like the big moment for them. And to be present for that, wow, wow, it's an honor and a privilege to do that.
I mean, having been married, gotten married myself a couple of years ago, it's a huge love moment for sure. And I think that's so cool that you're able to blend, like bring forward a dream that you had to put on hold a few times and finally able to live that and to be able to hold space in that moment, which I think is so beautiful. And especially because in COVID, given your specialty, being that you can do all faiths, that you've been able to help couples reimagine their own weddings right now and rethink how they can navigate and still have that moment despite COVID restrictions. So maybe you can share with us some of how that has gone.
Yeah, it was quite the challenge in the beginning, like when it all came down and weddings were getting canceled and brides and grooms were getting upset and
Oh, of course.
not knowing what to do because their stuff was being canceled. Nobody was doing anything. And I was continuously watching through my ministry, which I belong to the Canadian International Metaphysical Ministry. So watching what they would tell us we were supposed to do appropriately, and they told us just watch what the government says about gatherings and follow that.
Mhm.
So then I was like, okay, well, let's now put this out there that couples can now do outdoor weddings, 5 people. This was like back in March. And so I had a couple couples in April decide to do it outside, a little chilly. However, one of my couples decided that they were going to live stream it to their friends and family.
Oh,
96 people online. They reimagined how they were going to do it.
mm,
So even now, a lot of couples are saying, you know what? We don't want to wait. We want to do it on the date we want to do it because it might be special, like a 4-year anniversary or something like that. Or they just realize that they just don't want to wait.
right.
Or it could be immigration, or it could be that families just want to watch as their couple gets married. So
Mm,
it's all important reasons to do it. So again, with everything being canceled, what are they going to do?
mhm,
And so the best thing is to start to go, okay, so how are we going to do this? And that's where
right.
someone like myself can help guide through, because I keep up on all of the regulations that are out there.
Mhm.
So then we're always following, and yet you can be as imaginative as you want to be. So
Yeah,
it's not like it's restricted. It's now we're
mm,
thinking, okay, how are we going to do this differently?
right. Almost more possibilities because it's already, well, in the, I guess, 8 months ago way people were planning weddings was an in-person, most lots of people, larger groups, still some intimate weddings for sure. But now there's even more possibilities. They're just different, I guess.
Yeah, and it's going, okay, so back then it was 5 people, then it went up to 10 people, now
Mm.
50 people outside.
Oh wow.
However, I always caution them because we still have to make sure that we follow the regulations. So I always say, well, figure out who your 15 to 20 people are that you want to have there,
Mhm,
depending on who you want there. And I've seen couples do it in the backyard where they've decked it out with a beautiful arch and all of that kind of stuff.
mm,
Or they've just done something very simple inside the house with the 5 people that are allowed to be there.
mm.
And again, it depends on what they believe to be true. So it really makes you go, okay, so what's important to me about a wedding, right? What's important to me about a wedding?
Yeah.
Is it really the flowers and the cake and the venue and the this and the that?
Mhm,
Or is it the people that are present to witness the love?
right.
And so then my ceremonies also echo a lot of love in there.
Mhm,
So then the couple has the opportunity to express that.
beautiful.
Yeah. So the
Ah,
ceremonies really are about love, commitment, the exchange of rings and vows, and all of those wonderful things.
mhm. So cool. It's just taking me back to my wedding, which was just so much fun and beautiful. And I think it's just so wonderful that, I mean, I know you've been following it all along and been helping couples since the beginning of COVID be able to navigate and do this and just be able to continue to do that for them. Which for everyone listening and watching, if you're in a space where you're looking to get married or you know someone who is, definitely reach out to Reverend Barbara Kawa by email. I know she's happy to chat with you about it and see if she's the fit for you to bring that extra boost of love into your special day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, awesome. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us on our show. It was a pleasure to hear about your journey, plus just opening up the conversation about what's possible, whether you're getting married or just need to rethink something else. There's all those possibilities that are out there.
Absolutely. There's always room for possibilities.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Thank you, Reverend Barbara Cow, for joining us, and everyone else, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today on Souls Outside, and we hope you enjoyed walking in our featured guest soul prints as much as we did. As always, we like to wrap up each episode with our extreme gratitude and appreciation for our founding sponsors who quite literally made it possible for Souls Outside to become a reality. First off, special thanks goes to Eche Savas and her company Palindrome Design for the amazing cover art, and noting that their sponsorship comes in support of their passion project, Self Build Sustainable. We'd also like to thank Chuck Henry for his amazing music, original music, that is featured throughout the episode. And of course, Elise Cannon, our amazing editor, who quite literally made it possible for any of these episodes to see the light of day. They probably would still be on a hard drive on my computer without her expertise, skill, and passion for editing. So we thank them so much. And until next time, we hope you enjoy your journey and continue following in the soul prints of those who have gone before. Hey, one last thing before you go. If you wish you could talk about this episode with myself, our featured guest, or other like-minded individuals like yourself, join us on Facebook or LinkedIn in our Souls Outside Facebook and LinkedIn groups. On Facebook, we do watch parties. On both, we have awesome conversations about what we talked about and are able to answer your questions on how you can go even further on your soul print journey. See you there.